Chair will call the January 3rd, 2023 meeting of the City Council to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Will do. Alderman Redpath.
Here.
Alderman Gregory.
Here.
Alderman Williams.
Here.
Alderman Fulgenzi.
Here.
Alderwoman Purchase.
Here.
Alderwoman DeCenso.
Present.
Alderman McMiniman.
Here.
Alderwoman Connolly.
Present.
Alderman Donlin.
Here.
Alderman Hanauer.
Here.
Mayor Langfelder.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, a quorum is present.
Thank you. We do have a presentation from Major Eddie from the Salvation Army and Josh Sabo to go over the continuum of care and answer any questions associated with the Heartland Homes program and strategy that's coming forward, and also the Salvation Army with the overflow shelter. So if you'd like to come forward, we'd appreciate it. Should say Heartland House, I believe.
No, I don't.
Well, they're going to let me go first, so good evening. Val Yazel, and I'm here kind of wearing two hats. I'm the chair for the Heartland Continuum of Care Board, and I'm also one of the executive members of the newly formed Heartland Housed Strategy Board. So the first thing we want to do is thank you so much for your ongoing support of everything that we've been trying to accomplish with the homeless community. Some of the things, just to remind everyone, some of the things that this horseshoe and the city have provided to us is that you helped provide funding for the strategic plan that Josh is going to present on in just a little bit. You've committed funds for the first construction of senior housing for homeless. You have committed funds for you committed funds for the ARP, the home ARP, and have committed to say that you would use those funds to support our strategic plan. Many times we have had funds from CDBG that we have been able to utilize for services for the homeless community. Let me look, what else? You have done a lot, let's just say that, and we are really, really grateful for that. I want to point to you several members of not only the continuum of care that are behind us, but also members of the strategy board that have joined us this evening, and I know that they join me in thanking all of you for all of your support and your continued support for all that. Before Josh gives his presentation, I did want to address one thing. There is a question I keep being asked by the community, and that is, what makes you believe that this plan is going to be different from anything else that we've done in the past? Well, the first thing for me is that this is a system. Unfortunately, in the past, all we've had the opportunity to do is to pick pieces of the entire system of care and address those. We've just plugged holes. And we're grateful for those holes that you've been able to plug, but it's not a complete system of care. So this new strategic plan addresses an entire system of care from beginning to end. That is one reason that I believe that this will be a successful strategy. The next thing I do believe is that we need to create a shift in our perception and the way we approach homelessness. Many times we have said to someone who is experiencing homelessness, get yourself together, work on your issues, and then if we have housing for you, we'll try and do something. We have now learned, and all of the much research bears this out, is that we need people to be safe in a home and wrap services around them so they can address whatever issue has brought them to homelessness. So for me, those are the two big things, two biggest things that will help us and will help this strategy be brand new, to do something different that we've never had an opportunity to do. The other thing is, with Josh coming on, we have been able to pull together. We've kind of worked in separate areas, and now with Josh being on board and helping us, we've all been able to pull together. And the communication has also been another thing that's just been huge for all of us. So these are many of the things that I believe that is going to be an effective way that we're going to be able to move forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Josh, who's going to kind of lay out the groundwork for how this is going to happen. I also want to personally thank each and every one of you, because we met with every one of you individually and went over this strategic plan. But we've been able now, with the creation of the Heartland House Strategy Board, we're starting to work on things. We're going to have to build this system from the ground up. So we have operations, we have policies, we have procedures that have to all be developed. And that Heartland House Strategy Board, which the mayor is a member of, will be a part of how we start to address this issue. So, Josh?
Thanks, Val, and I also echo her thanks to each of you. And so what I'd love to do is just to take a few moments and hit some of the high points of the plan. The plan's roughly 27 pages long, but some of the parts that we'll talk about tonight will really give you a good feel. And like I said, I know we had the opportunity to sit with each of you and walk through it as well. And then at the end, I think knowing what's in the plan as we talk about how to move forward, if there's questions about how the overflow and shelter in general fits into that, we can talk about that. You can sit down if you want to, man. I know I hope I'll try to be short, but I feel bad for you at the same time. So we go to the next slide. We'll show you just what we aim to do. And honestly, the goal is ambitious for our community. We want to reach functional zero, which means that if a person experiences homelessness in our community, we want to be able to wrap the supports and services around them to help them end their homelessness within 30 days. And while that's an ambitious goal, it's not one without precedent. There's communities as close to us as Rockford, Illinois, that have reached functional zero for veterans homelessness, chronic homelessness, and unsheltered homelessness. And so we're seeing communities around us, and communities not very dissimilar from ours, solve this issue. And what we propose in this plan is not out of line with what those communities have done. Even in the time since we released our plan, the federal government released a new strategic plan, or at least an updated version of their strategic plan, and the state of Illinois has as well. And all of those plans share, a common foundation and are in alignment. And so what we're doing here, I just want you to know that it fits with what's going on at the national and state level as well, and in communities that are having success. The next slide just shows you just a little bit of a picture. What we are seeing and what we saw through the strategic plan as we did a full data analysis is that right now, the number of people who are experiencing homelessness in our community beyond what we currently have services to meet is growing by around 155 people per year. And so the urgency, the need to really address this issue in an effective way continues to grow, and I know we all feel that. So the plan sort of demonstrates with the red dotted line what could happen over the next 5 years if we don't collaborate and work together and build a solution. And the black line shows going down shows what we hope to accomplish. The first strategy on that. Oh, I do. I'm sorry. You're like, please, come on, man. All right. The first core strategy is to create new supportive housing opportunities to help people end their homelessness. What we do know about homelessness is that it's a complex issue, but at the end of the day, it's housing that ultimately ends homelessness. And when we talk about housing, we're talking about supportive housing that includes a rental subsidy, but also includes case management, connection to other services that help a person stabilize and address whatever challenges and barriers they may have in their life and ultimately to thrive. As we look at where our community currently is, there's a massive gap between the need and the services that exist in our community. At the time of the data analysis for the strategic plan, there are 1,142 people who are active in our database. Inside of that, our community only has 230 permanent housing opportunities. So that means permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, a few other voucher-based type of solutions. So the need for housing far outweighs what we have available for people. And connected to that, the smaller box there, only 16% of people who live outside, who live unsheltered, or who live or who are residing in emergency shelter situations ever experience supportive housing in our community. So the number of people who are actually getting access to services because the number of housing opportunities is so low is really low. And I think that connects to the conversation that was had last week, right? Thinking about people who are unsheltered, and there are people in our community and every community who, for a variety of reasons, are not going to access emergency shelter and other resources that are available to them. In our community, historically, if you won't access shelter, it's going to be really hard for you to ever get access to a housing opportunity, if you will ever get access to it. And so as we talk about system improvement in the next strategy, one of the things we have to do is build a system that can meet people where they are and work with them over time to help connect them with services that ultimately help them end their homelessness. And we've got a long ways to go. The plan says to meet that goal of functional zero, we need to create 765 housing opportunities over the course of the next 5 years. So to put that in scale, currently we have 230. We need to build 765 over the next 5 years. Some of the key first-year implementation steps to help us get there, as we talk about this Heartland housed entity that Val talked about, the strategy board is the board for that entity. We hope to build a staff through that will focus on some of the core needs in our community and to build the system that we need. So one of those is a housing development manager. That person would help to bring in new development, new funding for development, and then also help agencies to build capacity to go after additional funding. Additionally, in our community, we've seen a lot of success over the last 12 months of housing navigation services. Our community housing navigator is staffed at Helping Hands, and Nick Dodson's here with us. Hey, Nick. He's done a tremendous job helping people connect with housing opportunities, engaging landlords, getting landlords to utilize vouchers. We've seen a lot of success through that. And so securing funding to make sure that we can continue to offer housing navigation services and increase those is really important. Another part, looking at the home ARP funds. Looking at those funds, one of the things that the strategic plan recommends is that we use those funds to do something like a 30-person housing campaign, which would mean that we as a community would say, we want to try to figure out a way to house some of the people in our community who have the greatest risk and barriers to housing and support them in permanent supportive housing. So it would mean a rental subsidy and case management, connection to other services that they would need. We could, the idea there is to target people who are currently unsheltered. To give you an idea, so when we talk about 765 housing opportunities, those $2.4 million could create 40 of some of the most challenging housing opportunities for our community to develop. There's a couple more there, but just for the sake of time, I want to keep moving, and then obviously we'll answer questions at the end. The second core strategy is about improving the effectiveness of our system and connecting people to the services and support that they need. Our community has a lot to offer. As Val kind of mentioned, silos and working independently can be a challenge. We've seen a lot of success in groups beginning to collaborate, but we've got a lot of room for growth. We've got a lot of parts of our crisis response system, actually every part, needs to grow. It needs to expand, whether that's street outreach, becoming more effective at coordinated entry and really connecting people to housing opportunities, and then creating those housing opportunities. There's significant room for growth in our community, which I think also we see as we look around. This is a graphic out of the strategic plan. One of the things that I just want to highlight is that when a community like ours lacks housing opportunities, we see a statistic like that's at the top centered there. 12% of people served in emergency shelters leave to permanent destinations. So in a community where there is no exit, people end up essentially being stuck in emergency shelters. And it doesn't have to be that way, right? The graphic underneath shows that 88% of people who are served through rapid rehousing in our community actually end their homelessness and move on to stability. Connected to that, since 2019, our community has had a 99% success rate in permanent supportive housing. So that means households who have been homeless for longer than a year, and someone in the household has a disabling condition. Some people in the community might think there's no chance they'll be stable in housing, but in our community, permanent supportive housing has been 99% successful over the last few years. So we know these interventions work, but we also know we have nowhere near enough of them. Some of the key implementation steps in year 2, create low barrier housing focused shelter system. What you all have done with Overflow, what we've been working to do over the course of the last 3 to 4 years around really improving the shelter system is a part of that. Another part of that is developing community-wide standards. So we'd engage a consultant to come in and help us look at best practices, look at what's currently happening in our community, and work towards an agreement about what emergency shelter, day services, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing should look like. That would help you as potential funders of different programs know what to expect and to know what deliverables to attach to different programs. Again, I think connected to last week's conversation, one of the things that our outreach task group is trying to do, working to do, is to create a by name list of every person who's experiencing unsheltered homelessness. And a lot of times that involves interaction with our shelters too, because sometimes people will stay in shelters and sometimes they'll choose to be unsheltered for a period of time. One of the things that we know about our community is that we have nowhere near enough devoted outreach workers, right? I think the work that we've seen happen through the homeless outreach team officer in our community over the last several years has been a really significant step forward. I think the addition of Shannon Allen and the community care coordinator has been a significant step forward, but we need more outreach efforts. And as we talk to partners about that, sometimes there's a reluctance for agencies or organizations to do outreach because at the end of the day, there's nothing really to offer people. Right? They can try to talk people into going to shelter, but there's no housing opportunities. They can work to get them on the coordinated entry list, but it feels like they're working to get them on a waiting list. And so you can start to see how investing in shelter and street outreach are an important intervention, but they become even more important when we're also coupling them with adequate housing opportunities to help people in their homelessness. The third strategy is all about recognizing that homelessness often involves an interaction with many different systems that exist in our community, whether that's healthcare, the justice system, workforce development, foster care, just to name a few. Often there are transitions that people encounter in their lives when they're going through a hardship or a certain stage of life, and if there's not adequate support around them, it can lead to homelessness. And so it's a great opportunity for our community to really figure out and do better at discharge planning, collaborations that perhaps haven't previously existed in our community and building those out. One of the reasons why that's so important is that our community sees what research studies have shown for well over the last 10 years is that often homelessness is expensive for communities. We spend more money reacting to homelessness than we would actually investing in supportive housing and solving homelessness. This research study, it's over 10 years old even, but shows that sometimes it's about 20% of the people in a community experiencing homelessness that account for about 60% of the costs. And that if we can reach functional zero when it comes to chronic homelessness, we have the potential to really shift how our community invests in preventing homelessness, right? If we don't have to spend as much on shelters or street outreach, we can begin working on eviction prevention and helping people to not experience the trauma of homelessness in the first place. And so that's a significant thing to keep in mind, but it also has implications for the justice system. It has implications for our emergency rooms and our medical facility partners, mental health partners. Each of these services, the needs for them and their interactions with them go up if homelessness is not solved. Some of the key implementation steps in year one of this strategy involve working with the healthcare system and other systems to figure out how to share data. How do we partner more effectively, whether it's outreach, and we've talked about even our neighborhood police officers, figuring out a way for information to be shared and outreach teams to act upon that, which again, I think connects to some of the conversations had last week. Another need in our community is to create units of bridge housing. So as people experience those transitions in their lives, they have adequate space to go and figure out and get the support they need to move on from that. And then developing, launching, and cross-training a discharge planning task force in our community. The fourth core strategy involves developing local infrastructure to support growth and ultimately implement this plan. As Val mentioned, I've been the coordinator of the Heartland Continuum of Care for 2.5 years now. And prior to that, there was no devoted system staff in our community. And as we look at all that we want to accomplish over the course of the next 5 years, we know that one person is not going to be enough to support the agencies, to support the system to grow in the direction that it needs to. And so as we look to move forward, we're looking for funding in part, and I'll mention that in a moment, to really develop adequate system leadership and to create a backbone organization that helps lead all of these efforts going forward. What that looks like, and historically what it's looked like in our community has just been the Heartland Continuum of Care. All of the work involved in developing a strategy, developing solutions, ultimately trying to find funding has all fallen on that group, and it's been an incredible challenge. So as we have looked for a sustainable way to address this issue as a community, we've come up with this model, which involves the strategy board. Mayor Langfelder sits on that. The county chairman sits on that. We have representatives from local philanthropy, faith community, people with lived experience, the medical community, all are on a part of that. And the idea is that this group is going to be evaluating data, evaluating gaps in the system, hearing from the Continuum of Care Board about what they need on the ground, and figuring out how to come up with resources to actually scale the solution to homelessness in this community. So that, just as an example, is part of the infrastructure that's going to help us reach this goal if we can reach our goals to create it. In addition to that, we're also creating a lived experience advisory board. One of the I think things we've missed out on as a community is that we haven't involved people with homelessness oftentimes in helping to develop the solution, but also helping to improve the system. And so the lived experience advisory board will be a board, and it'll be where people will be compensated for their time, but will have a leadership stake in helping our community to scale these solutions and bring them to bear. And then the housing task force is connected to that first strategy. If we're going to create 765 housing opportunities, we're going to really need to collaborate, build partnerships, and really put in an incredible amount of effort to not only find units, but figure out how to support landlords who make those units available and support the agencies who are providing services in those units. A couple implementation steps for this strategy are to launch the strategy board, hire staff, create data dashboards. I think this is something that'll be useful to you, and a place on the website where you could go and see inflow into the system, outflow, have an idea and a level of accountability about what is happening or is not happening in regards to various parts of the system, and then to launch the Lived Experience Advisory Board. Some of the implementation that's already in progress, as is mentioned, the strategy board is already going. We've engaged a consultant to come in and look at our coordinated entry system and begin to help us figure out how to improve it and prioritize. The Heartland Housed entity has been created. The Lived Experience Advisory Board, there's some progress there. And as has been talked about, some emergency shelter system developments. I know it's been something that usually when we come, we're talking just about that. But the potential for a new facility, the potential to continue overflow and make sure that we have adequate space for every person who needs it in our community is a significant part of moving forward. And then additionally, this whole prevention side of we have a training happening in January where our shelters and other partners will be learning about shelter diversion. How do we help a person who's presenting to shelter figure out a way to not need shelter or go back to a situation that ultimately is healthier for them. So that's another implementation part of this that's already going. And then lastly, what do we need from you? We would love for the city and the county to formally adopt this plan as your plan to address homelessness over the course of the next 5 years. We'd love for you to support the development of Heartland House as the backbone organization for reaching the goals of this plan. The county we've put together a budget for $625,000 to include staff, to include training for organizations, the Lived Experience Advisory Board, and other components. So the county has committed 40%, Capital Township has committed 20%, and we would ask the city to match the county at 40%. And then the home ARP funds that I've talked about, we've already begun meetings with the community and the city about those funds so that they can be allocated before the end of March. And again, those funds could be used to create 40 permanent supportive housing opportunities. They could be used to do a lot, but in line with the plan, we could see 40 people end their homelessness and enter housing as a result of what those funds could be used for. And then again, as Val listed the long list of ways that you are already invested in coming up with solutions on this issue. And so we thank you for that, but we also ask for your continued partnership. A lot probably, but any questions in regards to that and your review of the plan already?
Alderman Donlin?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Josh, thank you so much for you and your organization's work. This is a long time coming and much appreciated, and I think going to make a difference for this community. I do have a couple of basic questions, though. If you could explain, and you had to do this for me before, the differences between rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing. I think those are two important points that need to be driven home.
Sure. In some ways, they're the same. It's helping a person get into a unit where that unit is mostly paid for. At most, they're paying 30% of their income. And then also includes case management services, right? So a person is in a unit, supported in that unit. In rapid rehousing, that support is designed to back away in 2 years or less. So it's a short-term intervention, and a person, might be stable after 3 months or 1 year. It depends on what barriers they're facing. Permanent supportive housing, it's possible that support may need to stay forever. It doesn't go away. So that case management support might be needed for a longer period of time. And the rental subsidy as well. A lot of times in our community, we see people, and even in permanent supportive housing, after 5 years or sometimes even before that, maybe they get a voucher with the Springfield Housing Authority, and they no longer need that case management, so they sort of move on and open that permanent supportive housing spot for another person.
Can you describe what each one of those types of housing situations, what would that look like?
Like the physical?
Yeah.
It varies, right? So in, the Park Street apartments, those are going to be 20 units, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, all in one location. There are other, buildings like that in our community. Most of the time it's scattered site. So it might be a 1 bedroom if it's a single person, or if it's a family. It could be a house even, or a 2 bedroom that's just sort of spread out in various parts of our community.
Alderman Gregory?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do agree with you. We have to give kudos. I really believe our homeless outreach officer, combined with Ms. Shannon Allen, has really helped our street outreach and really getting to know what's out there and getting to know people and getting them to services. So I do thank you for that. And Ms. Val, I thank you for the compliment to the city, because I know all of us may think of a different way, but we care deeply to get this to help people move along, and quite frankly, when things don't go right, we hear about it, right? It's the city, and we're relying on the professionals to really guide us in that. So I appreciate that. I just had a few questions, and I'm gonna move on. You guys have been great with giving us the details. Well, you answered my question. You need, $250,000, and that's per year type of thing. Okay. And then my only other comment was the Live the Experience Advisory Board and the Strategy Board. I really, really think, and this is just my opinion, but I really hope we think about how that can work together, because I think that people who have come along and lived a homeless life and in some regards made it out, can really, really help us form that strategy. And oftentimes we form those strategies without getting that information. So I think it will work well for them to work together, so they don't feel like, well, we're just down here and our opinion doesn't count or anything like that. Sort of like our boards and commission, we do try to listen to them. So I appreciate it. Keep up the good work. And the only other thing I was asking is, I didn't see in here is, in those services that we're going to wrap around them, how are we thinking about like job opportunities, or maybe partnering with the Chamber of Commerce or the Black Chamber of Commerce to really those who want to work job opportunities to really help with that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alderman Gregory. That third strategy, when it hits on those other systems, like one of the systems is workforce development. Okay. And so it's in a similar way, so some of the staff of Heartland Housed will be tasked with, engaging, so Housing Navigator is engaging landlords, growing that part of it. Another part of it will be engaging employers. And really, a lot of our agencies already have great relationships with different businesses in town. Okay. But especially as we move more people into housing, we're going to need more opportunities and more employers too. And we've met with the chamber, both the Chamber of Commerce and the Black Chamber of Commerce in regards to that. And I did want to mention the Lived Experience Board too. I think you're exactly right. So one of the hopes of that, so that Lived Experience Advisory Board and even the strategy board, one of the things that we wrote in the governance is that a person with lived experience has to be on that board. And that through that Lived Experience Advisory Board, we really hope to, find a passionate group of people and make sure that there's at least a person with lived experience in every single board, every task group, everything that we do, for exactly the reason that you said. I think some of the reasons why we miss out sometimes, the perspective is not quite right because we haven't been there. So
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Alderman Hanauer.
Thank you. Josh, thanks again for bringing this forward, and congratulations on all the work that y'all have done. I guess my concern is, plans are great on paper. What percentage of people do you think will not? You're only going to help people that want help. What percent out there is not going to want help, and what do we do for them? Because I think those are the people that turn out to be the problems and whatnot. And how do we address that?
Sure. I think at the end of the day, one of the things we haven't been able to do through street outreach and even through emergency shelter interventions is offer people housing. And so, I think you're absolutely right. There might be people who are resistant or for some period of time, don't believe that's possible for them. But through continued street outreach engagement, through continued mobilization, the by names list, a person, you're working on that next challenge, whatever it is for them and whatever they're willing to work on, and you keep going. It's incremental growth over time, done in a collaborative system like this. It can be incredibly complex, but it can be successful, and we believe it will be successful for most people.
Well, because my concern is, I'm all for moving. We spend a lot of money on the shelter now, on the emergency shelter net, but hopefully in this we could divert some of that, to where it evens out maybe, or But if we can't get, let's just say 50%, that's a large number that we've got to address. And quite honestly, many of them may not even be going to the shelter now because they don't want to have any rules. They don't want to follow anything. And they want to live their life free and easy, whatever. But
sure.
I just am concerned about the ones that either they're mentally ill, they don't want help from anybody. They want to do their thing, and so.
I understand what you're saying, and I think, what successful street outreach is, what successful, collaborations with other systems, really involves, how do you deliver mental health, how do you deliver other needs to where a person is at some level, and, as you begin to get the system moving, so people are going into housing and they're not waiting in shelters for years, we'll see people's mental health improve just on the basis that they have a place to lay their head at night. So the energy is constantly going to be, if we reach this goal in 5 years, everything that we do is going to transform. Yeah. So the amount of energy that's invested in one space is going to have to shift. And some of that, even what we're proposing with the home ARP funds, let's focus those funds on people who are unsheltered. And so if we could do that, then we'd be able to come back to you a year from now and say, hey, as a community, this is what we said was most important. We went out and we worked with 40 people in our community who are facing some of the most barriers, and we'll have some success stories to share, which, is something that's hard to come by when we don't house people very rapidly.
Thank you.
Alderman Williams.
Yeah, so I appreciate you coming, and I think since I've been on the council, things have gotten better. I appreciate the energy and commitment that your group is putting to fixing some of these problems with housing. I, as an alderman, have been struggling on who is homeless, what is homeless, and it kind of goes in line with what Alderman Hanauer has asked is, what if they don't want to participate or they don't want, because that's what I get. I get the type of call, as you know, my ward, North Dirksen, going north, I have several hotels that you can rent rooms like by the hour. And sometimes the people can afford to rent those rooms or stay so many hours. When their hours up, they got it. Is that considered homeless? to your group?
Yeah, so we'll follow HUD's rules so on some of that, but, at the end of the day, if a person's paying on their own or if an agency's paying, there's all sorts of complexities to that.
Yes.
But if a person does not have a place made for human habitation to stay in, ultimately they're experiencing homelessness. And I think in regards to what you're saying, you're right, it's complex at times, and where a person is and what they want, again, I think it illustrates the need for effective street outreach and persistent street outreach that really continues to try to know a person and work with them over time, but then connected to resources that work, right?
Yeah.
If a person doesn't want to go to emergency shelter because they don't want to be in a large space or something else, and that's all you have to offer them, then, it's going to lead to a variety of.
Sure. So there's a stigma to the word shelter or emergency shelter or, I don't know, winter warming center, all those things. It's a stigma. So, the guys that say to me, because what happens, I get the kind of call that says, Alderman, this homeless woman or this homeless guy is messing with my patrons or my customers. And sometimes it happens so much that I just go myself. And when I get over there, I meet the person. It's usually somebody that carries a bag or has everything they own with them. But when they have the money, they're in that hotel room. They're living in a hotel space. But when they don't have the money, they're out saying to me, well, Alderman, as soon as I cut these 2 yards, as soon as I do whatever these odd jobs, I'm going to get this money, I'm going back into the hotel. But in the meantime, they're what ordinary people are, would say, you're harassing me. You're stopping asking my customers for dollars and for money and for things like that. And do we have programs that educate and kind of take the stigma off of the word shelter so that some of those type of guys, I don't know, maybe more willing to come into something and find a smarter way to spend that money that they earn? So these are not criminals. These are not, these are just people on hard times and trying to make it, but don't want to do the shelter piece, that thing. So the average person that calls me thinks that's a homeless guy because they're begging and they're living in that place and so they're all up and down there because I have, like I said, I have like 2 or 3 of them. And I was just wondering how these programs I hear about at City Council engages that population of people, or even are they considered homeless? So I appreciate your answer on it. I just wanted to give you that something to chew on, and maybe some of your task force to chew on. The other pieces, as you know, Ward 3 is where the new Helping Hands is coming to locate over in the juvenile piece. You probably all heard about this. Does your group think that's a smart move, and do you endorse that or sign off on it?
Yeah, the Heartland Continuum of Care has expressed its support for that. I think as our community has had this conversation, location is something that's obviously been a difficult conversation for our community. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to what services can we offer, right? What can we do to help a person stabilize? What services can we offer to connect them to housing? And so some of the community standards and things like that will help shape some of that, I think, for our community. But at the end of the day, I think something that's stable, that's more sustainable for our community, gives us a foot forward for sure.
Okay. Well, so again, as alderman, and when I met with Helping Hands and them, I said, hey, listen, there's no neighborhood associations there, there's no schools there, there's no churches. I mean, okay, fine. However, is it smart putting those people that need them shelter so far out? And the only pushback I've gotten as alderman has come from businesses. I have Abe Hideout, that whole strip mall there, this and that. And they come from their experience. They come from saying when the Greyhound was there, the Greyhound would lock their building until the bus was due, And then the people would hang out and, like they do at any bus station. But then they would wander over into the parking lot and start begging the car lots and start begging, the patrons of that restaurant, of that, I think it's a Back Doctor and some other nails is in there, things like that. When I talk with the county says, well, listen, Alderman, we're going to give them bus tickets, like SMTD, and we're going to run shuttles 3 times a day. Everything's free. So they will be able to get to their other services, doctors, wherever they got to go. But it goes back to that question, if they're willing. because you can't make them get on a bus, or you can't make them do a bus. They made the decide to just start going up and down Durskin and doing their business there, kind of like they do wherever they're at now, at the library downtown, where this is the fear of those businesses over there. And I know that was thought out, and I appreciate they thought about me saying, well, you know, I don't want no more east even, not only just Ward 3, but east. We did our fair share, and I can give you tons of places where we're doing it. So they're coming there. It's a county-owned building. Not much I can do as alderman, and I appreciate that they look to make sure what no church, school, neighborhood association, this and that. The businesses, I really don't know what to tell them, you know. But again, that is pretty far out there, and I just was wondering how the experts, the professionals that work with homeless, feel about that, putting them so far away. Now, the people that talk to me always say, oh, they should be around the medical district. They're mentally ill. They should be in Ward 5. You know, but my whole point is, I just wonder where you guys came down on that. So you guys think it's okay. You know, that was a good deal. I understand the, you know, Helping Hands is going to have much more space. They're going to be able to offer day services. Plus. That's why I didn't fight it and said, hey, that's a good thing. Anytime we can do our part, even though I knew it was unpopular, I knew the ward needed to step up and help the city, and the building was already there. And, you know, they was doing two needs. You know, Helping Hands was getting out their way so they can do something on Washington Street. They was filling a half-empty building. So I understood that. I went along with it. I just hope that you guys continually work on that transportation piece. I'm kind of concerned there because that's kind of far out, and they could start thinking they can just walk all the way through the city to get downtown or where they're used to going, and then that just brings up so many other issues.
Yeah, I really appreciate your spirit towards that project too, and what you've expressed there.
Yeah.
You know, some of the things when I've talked to people about that project, and you know, and they'll say, well, it's far out, and I'll say, well, it's far out from what? Well, the mission. Well, if it's open 24/7, they may or may not want to go to the mission, and I think that's, you know, to your point, Alderman Gregory, like, you know, conversations were had with clients to say, this is a possibility. You know, what do you think? And obviously, this is not my presentation to give, but I know, you know, especially through zoning, you know, more will be, you know, discussed around this. But, you know, transportation from the community is absolutely a big thing that has come up, and it's something that will need to have a good solution in order to be effective. But to me, a situation where a person doesn't have to leave a shelter at 6:30 or any given time, whether they want to or not, is really beneficial.
Yes.
And then if it allows us as a community to rally around it and offer services and you know, other enrichments on site, and really works towards housing focused and, you know, housing focused services, and helps people get all the IDs and all of the things that they need to be successful elsewhere, and workforce, you know, there's so much potential to wrap other services around that in a way that's dignifying and doesn't sort of say to a person, it's 6:30, it's time to go. You know, that to me is really exciting.
Yeah, I think that's important. So I appreciate you coming, and thank you. I'm going to stop because I see we lined up, and I didn't took up some time, so I appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Alderwoman Conley.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, Josh, thank you for the presentation. Thank you to everyone in the audience who's part of the continuum, who puts in more time, effort, sweat, blood, and tears than any of us can in addressing this problem. And your work is very much appreciated. And please know it does not go unnoticed. It's critical. This is exciting, and it's nice to have some good, exciting news. You know, you talk about, I think we've all sort of touched on it, but that cycle of hopelessness, you know, where we don't, people, yeah, you're right, Alderman Williams, people, there are stigmas attached to the shelter concept, and maybe we have seen more people staying in places, I get the calls too, in Ward 8 in empty buildings, that people are kind of, you know, and most of the time neighbors are calling me because they're concerned, you know, like someone's going to get hurt here. I can't tell you how many prayers I put up hoping that nothing was found in the fire on 11th Street. And that everyone got out safely is some of the best news I got, you know, recently. But what we're seeing here, I think, is an opportunity for people to feel hopeful. And you touched on it briefly and then moved on very quickly because there's a lot in here, but you do have as part of your strategy, it's not just housing people, but you're working with employers. And it's not just building new housing, but working with existing landlords. So can you, if you could, just a little bit more detail about, because you did touch on that, the employment portion of it, but what kind of outreach are you doing with landlords, and what kind of supports are you giving to landlords so that there's an increased level of comfort in knowing the supports that the continuum provides, that your agencies provide, and what they can expect in, in using their available units for someone who will be part of this program?
Yeah, thanks, Alderman Conley. I think, Nick's role in the housing navigation has been just a significant step forward there. So some of that is working with landlords, and what he does is just talk to them about the programs. And then, gives them the opportunity to talk with agencies too, have success stories, but, honestly too, recognize that it is, and it does feel to landlords like a bit of a risk at times. And so with that in mind, the Continuum of Care has developed a landlord risk mitigation fund. We were able to start it initially with a contribution from the Community Foundation for $30,000, but what it can offer landlords is, $3,000 beyond the security deposit for damages that might occur. And we've Alderwoman Purchase, we recently updated that to include, other, bed bugs or anything like that could come up. So really trying to hear from landlords, and I think, again, that relationship that Nick has developed has helped us to hear what those concerns are, and then try to bring something to the table that can bring, some level of comfort there. And then overwhelmingly, like I said, we've had 99% success in PSH, so our permanent supportive housing. So we see that it ends up being not only a successful endeavor for the person that's entered housing, but also for the landlord, because they've had a stable income come in through that property and done well in it.
Thank you for blowing the horn I wanted you to blow there. 99% success rate is pretty phenomenal. I mean, really, in anything. That's really great news. I hope that level of success encourages other landlords to work with you. I know we're seeing Helping Hands making, a big move to a different part of the city, but I think that people also need to understand that permanent supportive housing can be anywhere in the community, and really should be.
And is currently.
It currently is, right? And I think that kind of as you do your work and this community of the continuum of care gets more promotion, gets more recognition, and has that kind of a more open conversation around what does it mean to have someone in supportive housing. And I think we should acknowledge that people who are experiencing homelessness can be housed anywhere in the community, in any ward, and it can be safe, and it can be functional, and it can be actually a benefit to the landlords and to the residents. Right. I know I have 2 units in my ward that I drive by all the time, and they must be constantly evicting people because there's constantly stuff out on the curb. I would love to see those units just be intact, in place. People have their stuff there, and we don't have to deal with, the biannual twin bed on the curb. Right. Because it happens at this place all the time. So I really appreciate that. My other question is going to kind of bleed into Captain Eddie, who, thank God you sat down, right? He's taken all. But can you just kind of give a little more information around what a low barrier housing focused shelter system looks like? And is that something that we can really start, feeding into? We're looking at a $400,000 grant for Salvation Army to run our existing emergency shelter. Is the plan that those funds will be used, and that's going to work into this program, so that we're going to see this, where we are right now, will springboard into this system?
Yeah, and we've already seen that too. One of the hires that the Salvation Army made this year was a case manager. So that person has been, works with other agencies, but works with clients. So it's already sort of working with people and sort of saying, what's the next step towards housing? Is it coordinated entry? Do you have income? So a lot of that work has already begun, and I'm sure will continue. And then the low barrier side of things is really just sort of saying, I think probably some of what we see as regards to unsheltered homelessness comes from, the fact that often shelters have had rules or different things that might have been a barrier to a person coming to shelter and staying in shelter. And
right.
So low barrier is a way of saying we want to try to keep a safe environment, a comfortable environment, but also do as much as we can to get those barriers out of the way and ensure that a person will access a safe place to sleep.
Right.
So a lot of that has already been done and already in motion, and I think is well prepared to make a seamless transition into what's next.
Perfect. It's good to know. And
You wanna-
Captain Eddie, he just took one of your questions off of, one of my questions off of the list for you. So thank you very much. Just final question. When you talk about outreach workers, is that outreach workers that are affiliated with one specific organization, or who would they work for, and how does that?
I think it's something the strategy board really needs to kind of dive into. I think it could look both ways, organizations that have shelters or programs like that, to have an outreach worker is not a bad thing. But to also, when I see the work that Shannon Allen and Officer Newman do too, there's a great benefit to them not really being connected to, they can sort of float around and they know what resources and they can kind of bounce around. And so probably a both and approach ultimately is what would be best. But at the end of the day, right now, there's just so few people who are solely devoted to outreach that's where that becomes, a challenge. And then also, when are those outreach services available? Is it just more of a 9 to 5? What about the evenings, later in the night, those types of, so those are some of the gaps that, again, I think the strategy board really needs to dive into and figure out how to, whether it's putting out a request for proposals, this is what we want, like will be a next step there.
It's a nice way to tell me you haven't got quite the answer to that yet, but we'll get one. So we'll follow up next year on that one.
We might be coming to ask for funding, who knows, so.
And is Memorial Behavioral Health partnering with you, and we have?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, they're in several ways. There's the PATH team that is involved with shelters and does some outreach, and then the city has funded an outreach worker for MBH2 who does a lot of work across all organizations. And then they're involved with the Continuum of Care Board, a lot of different, most of our task groups they're on, so they're an active partner.
Wonderful. And I guess just so finally, if there are employers who are interested in connecting you with, maybe they haven't, worked through the chambers yet, who should they reach out to?
They could reach out to me. Likely what I'll do is, once I hear from them, connect them with an organization, at this point, too. But I'd be happy to talk to anyone.
Because I'm sure you know a lot of people who probably would like a decent job, and I'm hearing all the time that there aren't people, enough people to work, so.
And there's so much to that, right? In terms of,
Right.
training, and again, some of that could happen in a shelter that has those types of services. But then even to think about case management, not just in terms of housing, our case managers do a lot of broad work, but a place where there's case managers that are sort of devoted to workforce, right? So they can work with employers and employees to help make sure that that's a great arrangement, so that's some of the space we hope to kind of step into.
I'm really excited to see you go that direction, so thank you very much for tonight, and again, thank you to everyone doing the work. We appreciate you very much.
Alderwoman Purchase.
Thank you, Mayor. And I ditto Alderwoman Conley's questions because I was going to bring up the landlord. But thank you all for giving me the opportunity to be at the table, Amy, and talk about what we see from a landlord perspective, and you guys taking that and including it in there when I talked about bed bugs, those things. How much of that money have we spent since you've updated for mitigation with landlords?
So 3,000 is the max. We just approved like the first payment of that right before Christmas. So I anticipate that now that we've gotten started, I don't anticipate it will last very long, but we'll see.
Got you. And then Nick has done a great job with the vouchers too. Do you know when we'll be expanding to increase more vouchers?
Yeah, so the Housing Authority is involved in the Strategy Board and the Continuum of Care Board. So those emergency housing vouchers were a one-time opportunity, but they can be reissued before 2023.
Okay.
So September of 2023. We didn't make the 2023 deadline. And so that's the conversation we're having now. Is it possible to transfer people who initially got into an emergency housing voucher to a housing choice voucher, and then help a person who maybe is in shelter or in another program enter into those emergency housing vouchers. And then there's, in the fall, we applied for almost $700,000 in new HUD funding. We should find out about that in February. We know that funding, there's new federal funding for additional housing vouchers. So we're always hoping that more resources flow down from that direction. And we're better positioned now with this plan and the work that we've done to go after those opportunities than we have been historically.
Okay, and I know you said we're at 230 units, but we need to get around 765 units over the course of the next 5 years. How are we using a campaign strategy to push to more landlords while you're also continuing to do new development?
Right.
So to the public eye.
That's great. Nick's already got some success stories and some things like that, so we do, that's kind of in motion. The other part, one of the things, the numbers that we put together in the strategic plan is that it costs about $13,000 to support a household in supportive housing.
Okay.
So as we look at expanding those housing opportunities, our intention is to use that number, to use that figure, to create a 100 homes campaign or something along that nature, to create more housing opportunities, and hope to find partnerships with businesses and faith communities and other partners to really expand the rental subsidy, the case management available through the community in that way, and again, to use that for landlords. I think part of the challenge, right? We have a plan. We're excited about having a plan, but we have no desire to sit here for a year ago and say, hey, but we still have a plan. I mean, we want to see things get done, and so these having resources actually come to bear so that we can actually create these housing opportunities is the next thing we have to get to work doing as soon as we can staff up and
I was
start.
also just glad to hear you say the success stories, because I know on our last Zoom we had, I said to Amy that maybe we should start having some of the landlords also put out that information too, to say how well it's working, how long it's been, because most of the landlords, the pushback that I get is that, what are you going to do if something goes wrong, or if they forgot and left the stove on and the house catches on fire or something? It's like a stigma out there. So I told Amy, I think us putting success stories out about how these landlords have been working as an ongoing partnership could help expose to others and want them to come on board. And then my last question is, I know that you're picking different areas for development, but how are we pushing that out? So if somebody says, one of us in our wards have a good amount of space or land that could be used for that, how would we know that that's available coming from you?
Yeah.
I guess, too, it's just a big question of pushing the information out to the public so they know what's going on and just how to contact, because you all have a lot of different components to what you said tonight in the presentation.
Right. Yeah, I think that's where having a staff beyond, just a staff of one is going to come in really handy. But obviously, the community education piece of it and putting those things out there is crucial. That first strategy, when it talks about that housing development manager, that's really the work of that person. They're going to be working with you all. They're going to be working with developers. They're going to be working with organizations, and so there will be a lot of extra energy around that part of the system once we get that person in place.
And please continue to let us know how we can help push the word out too, because it's on us too, with us being in our wards, to help you get the information out to our community.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Alderman Donlin?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Josh, again, thanks for coming this evening. It's interesting. This is a problem, obviously, that's been around Springfield and other communities our size for a great number of years. And I'll just be blunt and say it. Not that we aren't extremely appreciative of the Salvation Armies and other organizations that have operated the overflow shelter. Taking a look at this from a different perspective is just so important. And what I like about what I've heard, and I've even learned some new information here this evening, from the time we met, is that we have private partners, we have public partners, we have major employers, we have major units of government, smaller units of government, all trying to work together to help these individuals that need assistance. We've looked at this from a case management perspective. We looked at this from a homeless individual's perspective. And what I liked also about the ongoing group that will monitor and look at the goals and quite frankly, probably even change the goals in the future. But the fact that we've also looked at what other communities have done, and you mentioned Rockford specifically, that have been successful, I think is important. We're not necessarily reinventing the wheel. So thank you to everyone that's been here tonight. But my question is real simple, and I'll ask it of the budget director, but I want to be clear of the amount. You're asking the city this evening to consider putting in our budget, and I don't have my glasses, but I'm just trying to focus in here, $250,000 for the next budget, right?
Right.
Is that in the draft budget, Mr. McCarty?
But we are still working with OPED to finalize a couple of final things, which we hope to do tomorrow.
Fair enough.
So it's a good thing we're having this meeting tonight.
It is, and again, the fact that you spent this time and brought so many individuals, because we had specific questions about what goes on, but I think this is a positive step forward for this community and county and city. Thank you.
Alderwoman Conley?
Thank you. And just one quick follow-up where Alderman Donald and I were on the same slide. How do you envision adopting the strategic plan? as the city's plan? How do you envision that? What does that look like to you?
Mayor and I talked about that. I don't know if it's as simple as a resolution, basically a vote of support for the community, from the city of county, from the city and county is what we're after there, I suppose.
We can't get the county to do stuff for you, but
We'll work on that one.
you clearly got some money out of them, which is impressive. The other thing, when you talk about the commitments, the financial commitment from the county, is there a time frame that's attached to that? I mean, is it we're here for the 5 years at $250 a year, or?
I suppose it could always change, but the commitment at this point has been, ongoing as there's a need in a part of their annual budget.
Okay, because I think, Mayor, that's something that the city definitely needs to be looking into. And we're putting, and again, this is not a reflection on Salvation Army at all, please understand that, but $400,000 into an emergency overflow, just emergency overflow. If we could, make this investment into regular, sustained, going to the root cause kind of analysis. I mean, your slide with the graphics talking about, very small proportion of people eating up so many resources. If we can shift that dynamic, I think making a longer-term commitment to these annual costs would be critical for us. I'd certainly like to see a resolution come forward as soon as possible, Mayor. I'd be happy to help sponsor that if you need it, but I think this is a fabulous plan. Again, bringing so many different voices to the table, and you've heard it from us before, but that lived experience component especially is critical, and I appreciate that you made sure that was front and center too. So, again, thank you very much.
Alderwoman DeCenzo.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for putting this plan together. For as long as I've been on the council, we've talked about homelessness. And I can say just from my experience and in Ward 6, I've seen nothing but an increase in calls from businesses and calls from neighbors. It's ironic that when a house burns down, that's the house they go to, because it's not boarded up yet or they can get easy access to it. But this is a citywide problem, and there is nothing easy about homelessness. We had a former homeless outreach officer, Officer Jones, who really, really wanted to stay in that role. And I don't know if it's a contractual obligation, just like it is with the NPOs. I think the NPOs are ready to move on after 3 years, but Officer Jones really wanted to stay on. So I think we need to develop, we can't put everything on you. We have to take some of that too. And, just as you do, and just as Nick probably does, you get to know people on the street, and these officers know them well. They know their stories. They know what kind of help they need. So we, again, collaborative effort by everybody in all ways and all things, because if we want to get to functional zero, it's going to take all hands on deck, and that's it. I mean, we have to do our part as well. And I think 2 dedicated people, and I've said this before, it's just not enough. I also don't think, 2 NPOs is enough per beat, but, we'll get to that during the budget. So, thank you very much for putting this plan together. I'm in full support.
Alderman McMenamin.
Thank you for everyone involved. Josh, you're asking for an annual budget of $650,000. Would this budget be managed by Continuum of Care?
It would be managed by the strategy board. So the Heartland House Strategy Board is the strategy board for the Heartland Housed entity that's been developed, and that entity is seeking nonprofit status, to establish. The Continuum of Care has never been a 501c3, so there's always been fiscal agents and things like that in order to get things done. So this allows us to streamline a lot of that.
Oh, this $625,000, that's an operational budget. And that pyramid group that you've described, the Heartland House Strategy Board, would manage that money, but you're talking about the mayor, the county chair. They usually don't get into the grassroots of managing that kind of boots on the ground type money.
Sure,
So
yeah.
I'm really concerned, who's going to manage it? Who has the day-to-day time to manage $625,000? Have you broken up the $625,000 into position titles and that kind of thing?
We do have a budget, so it's not all staff. It includes, training and doing those types of things so that we can provide services for, enhance what agencies are able to do. I don't have it in front of me, but it includes doing some of the consulting work that we need to do to sort of improve the system and try to bring it up to speed quickly, rental for offices, all that type of stuff. So we won't be, it's a board like any nonprofit board in town that manages a budget, and will be completely well-staffed and adequate to do so.
So the $625,000, of that money, how much of that money do you expect would go to staffing positions?
And I apologize that I don't have that in front of my head. Some of that, we're still figuring out what that part of the budget's, I'm not entirely sure at the moment of that, but we can certainly get that to
You want to throw out a number, like 80%, 50%, 90%?
I think, what do you think? 60%?
Okay, 60%. So, so that's staffing. So now, I'm just trying to think this through logically, how this all, comes into play. Does Mayor Langfelder get involved in hiring of those persons? Of course not. Does the county chair get involved in that? Of course not. So who's going to be the hands-on manager of that money? The person, the top manager, the person that manages that money.
Okay. Yeah, the chair of the committee is Kim Mobley over here. So the executive committee is Kim Mobley, Val Yazel, Dominic Watson, and Tim Haworth.
So that, okay, I don't think you've described that group yet.
Yeah, the group, at least in terms of its structure, is there, but the people that are actually on that board is not in the plan at this point. That's been developed after the plan came out.
So I'm looking at, you had a chart showing the Heartland House Strategy Board. That's the top level people, the elected officials. And then you've got 3 subgroups after that called Heartland Continuum of Care, Lived Experience Advisory Board, Housing Task Force. So that those individuals you just mentioned, where do they fit in?
Let me find the right page for you.
Page 7.
Page 22, I think, is what you're looking for.
Okay, that's a different document than what we have.
Oh, is that? Oh, you had. So what you had last week? The full strategy is what you're wanting to reference on this. So it's appendix, strategy board membership, page 22 of the full plan that was passed out last week.
So those persons that you mentioned that would manage the $625,000 on an operational level, are those? Who do those persons work for? Could you just run through that?
HSHS, Independent, First Presbyterian Church, and I don't know what Dominic's, is Dominic with the Springfield, what's his full-time employment?
Ask me.
He works for us.
Ask me.
But he runs the Springfield project
Yeah.
in the Black Chamber of Commerce.
So that's the executive committee, if that's what you're asking.
So will the executive committee be I'm just trying to think this through from an operational point of view.
Sure.
You need accountability, you need structure, who hires, who do these people work for, and that kind of thing, and I just kind of vague about all
You'll
that.
benefit from, again, we included that for tonight, but we didn't bring it to say, hey, let's do this tonight. So I think what you need is more information than we prepared to bring tonight, but we'll be happy to show you, the budget, the draft of a financial agreement, draft of all of that type of stuff we'll be happy to show you, but we didn't bring that tonight.
Okay,
So
I
that's still being
understand.
developed since the nonprofit or entity is 6 weeks old or so.
I think, the $625,000, the next opportunity that needs to be flushed out, if we're going to approve a budget for our share of that, I think the idea of sharing the $625,000 between the county, the township, Capital Township, and the city of Springfield is a good idea. Then that's kind of staffing type and operational activity. Then you're suggesting that $2.3 million be devoted to actual real estate, I guess is the best way to, or housing units.
So, again, and the home ARP is, it can be used for a number of different things, right? If there was a permanent supportive housing development that was ready to go, it could be used for that. But it can be used for tenant-based rental assistance, and it can be used for supportive services. It can be used for, nonprofit capacity building. So some of those things are the things that we're recommending. So you could hire case managers, you could provide rental subsidy, which done in the right way is what permanent supportive housing is. So that's what we're recommending, not necessarily the physical building of anything, but it would be working with, existing landlords in the community.
Yeah, with the $2.3 million of the ARPA funds, we have to have a plan coming forward, and that's what OPED's working on. So it'll be there's been a public process associated with it, but once it's introduced, I think it has to be submitted by March. And so that's the timeline, but there'll be more information coming with regards to that.
So the 2.3 million, do you anticipate that'll be city ARP funds, or will there be contributions from county and?
So those are specifically home ARP funds. So they're different from city ARP funds, exist for the purpose of, in part, addressing homelessness and creating stable housing for low-income households.
So do those funds exist in an account presently, or are they?
Yeah. Yeah, Krista, if you want to come up and give a brief overview. I know she'll be nervous about this, but you can do it. Just explain the process, if you would, please, on the home ARPA funds.
The final question was, is that an anticipated annual amount that you would need?
That's a one-time, the city only got that one time and will only ever get that one time. So it could create these 40 housing opportunities and that support for about 4 years. And so, the program will need to work people towards stability and vouchers and, other solutions by the end of those 4 years.
So those are 40 housing opportunities that last 4 years each? Is that the idea behind it?
Correct.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
So that, I think, Alderman McMenamin, part of, when we talk about creating those 765 housing opportunities, there is a significant amount of funding that will be needed to do that, right? So that's, again, 2.4 million, or 2 million could get us those 40 housing opportunities. So it gives you a sense of, how much that's going to cost to really meet the goals in the plan. And the funding sources are going to have to be diverse. We're going to have to go after as much federal funding as we can, state funding, but then we're also going to have to, the work of the strategy board is to really align any community funding in the direction of this goal too. So, that's part of the challenge ahead for sure, but that gives you an idea of how great that challenge is.
Thank you.
Krista.
Yeah, Krista Kolish, she oversees CDBG, and been working with HUD and Continuum of Care and others on the process associated with the home ARPA funds.
Hi, the home ARPA funds were awarded in 21. It's 2.38, and it is to address the homeless initiative. These funds are a one-time allocation, unless HUD changes their mind and wants to give us more. But for the time being, these are one-time. We are having a planning meeting with COC on Thursday. This will be the second or third meeting. We had, Continuum of Care was gracious enough to host a meeting with all of the public service homeless providers in the community. Was that about 2 weeks ago?
Feels like a lot longer.
It was only like 2 weeks ago, but seems like a lot's happened since then. And now we're going through our public process. In February, we'll be presenting our draft plan, and that will be publicized in the paper and let everybody know that it's available for review. And then we'll submit in March and
For approval by HUD
for approval by HUD. Yes, thank you.
and the council too, city council. Any questions on that? Alderman Redpath? Thank you, Krista.
A lot of my questions were about the 625,000, Josh, and I'm confident you guys have a strategy and a plan for that we'd like to hear from before we go into the budget session.
Absolutely.
That will be sufficient.
Absolutely.
The thing is that the work that you, Major Eddie, you and Val, and the continuum of care has done is outstanding. This place, in the last few years, since you all got involved and took control of the reins of this thing, it's going in the right direction. Very pleased and very proud of the work you all have done, and you're making our community a better place. So, thank you.
Really appreciate that.
Any other questions or discussion?
Yes, I have one more thing.
Alderwoman Purchase.
Thank you. I forgot to press the
That's right.
button. Josh, with you all doing this great work, the other thing that I mentioned is sometimes we don't share all of the good work that we do. And if this is something that's going to pass and be every year, can you all personally come and share with us updates of what's going on?
Yeah,
I think that'd be really, really helpful.
absolutely.
At least once a year or quarterly, something.
Happy to. I mean, sure, I think doing this well involves communicating whether we're hitting our goals or not. So, I mean, that
Yeah.
really is the work of that strategy board, so.
Brag about what you do.
And if we don't, again, like, let's figure out what's needed. I mean, I think that's the whole, impetus for that strategy board is, all right, we're hitting our goals, good, let's keep it going. We didn't hit our goals, why not? What do we need to do? What partners do we need to rally to get there? So, I think now that we have the plan, we really have the foundation to jump off on, but good or bad, there should be accountability or celebration, but, at the end of the day, I hope more people experience stable housing out of it.
Alderman Williams.
Yes, real quick. So, and this may be you or it may not. So I'm trying to understand Helping Hands. In this agreement, when we talked about the move into the county, they made me aware that that's not free. They will be a tenant and be paying the county and would still need the city. And my question is, these funds we're talking about would Helping Hands come to you now since or would they still be something separate and come to the city?
Yeah, that's a great clarification. So this $250,000 is for this backbone organization, so that we can hire the staff, ensure that the HMIS database, ensure housing navigation, my position, that these positions in the community are stable moving forward, and then that the continuum of care, that there's training and other things that we can do to bring the community on board. So within that, there's not necessarily service provision dollars in that $625,000 budget. It's really, establishing this nonprofit.
So Helping Hands is coming too, is what you're saying?
I'm sure lots of folks are, I think everybody enjoys, being in this seat, so I'm sure lots of folks will be coming.
Well, this is to the mayor. I just hope that we would have a limit on how much we're going to be spending, toward this subject matter. I'm for it. I want to correct it and fix it. But this big hit with 625 to establish it on, I don't know the amount yet of what Helping Hands is going to need, but they were for sure to let me know, Alderman, we're still going to need our annual hit from the city to operate. And part of that was to pay the county for the new facility.
Well, sure. I think,
Thank you.
One of the things that I just want to make sure the community understands too, that to reach this goal of functional zero, establishing a system staff will help us align and get the pieces moving. But 100 housing, if we don't create the 765 housing opportunities, the system is still stuck, and so the need for funding to create these housing opportunities and the services that help connect to those, not just on the city, but as a whole community, we're going to have to figure out ways to fund the system to reach this goal. So, and it's, to address this need properly it's not an inexpensive endeavor. So I just want to make sure the whole community understands that.
Thank you.
Sir.
Yep. Alderman McMenamin.
Again, thanks everyone for participating in this. I guess my final thought is I think there needs to be some executive responsibility and accountability. And you indicated that the continuum of care is not a 501c3. It seems to me that it would be advantageous for continuum of care to apply for 501c3 status so that potentially you could have some control over the funds and you could create accountability. We have, at last count, some 13 various shelters, various types of shelters of different kinds within the city, and we need someone who's going to be responsible for kind of assessing all of those shelters and deciding whether the money is well spent and who's making progress and who hasn't. Some really tough management is needed out there. That's, so Josh, I
So
think,
if I could
please
speak on
don't
that.
dodge that responsibility here.
Well,
We need
that-
someone like you that's worked
that-
at this for 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, just for the sake of understanding, that is, so the role of this Heartland housed backbone entity is to be that, the source where funding can come out. But that being said, funding for shelters comes from a million different sources outside of the city. And, that's one of the challenges as a community. You don't dictate most of the funding that goes to the effort. So that's where, this is a collaborative impact model. And, the goal of this strategy board and the Heartland House staff is to really support collaboration, train organizations to move in the directions that ultimately help reach the goals. And there can be monitoring and accountability, but, state, federal funding is not going to flow through this organization.
Correct. I
out to
completely
shelter.
understand that all those shelters have their existing sources of funding, et cetera. What I'm trying to say is, to the extent we get incremental funding, that's the funding that, the continuum of care could be responsible for.
Right, and that is exactly what the strategy board is, and this Heartland House entity is created to do.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Conley?
I just want to clarify. I think, Josh, what you're saying is Heartland Housed is a 501c?
Well, is in the
Or is
process
it
of becoming.
in the process
right.
of becoming one? So I think that was, I don't know if that was quite said.
Yeah, okay.
And there'll be accountability through the continuum of care. I'm sure Josh is going to have a larger role to play on the Heartland House side of things, so things will be, you have to have the accountability.
Yeah, and the continuum of care is really a part of this Heartland House. It's all interconnected, and, the staff and the leadership is all connected.
Well, we thank Val, yourself, and Major Eddie for all you're doing, and all the agencies here and that aren't here that help out our homeless. We really appreciate it. And shout out to Jane Ford. She's with the Community Foundation that helped fund part of the strategy, I believe.
Absolutely.
And so we thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Chair will entertain a motion to dispense with the
So
reading of
moved.
the minutes of the December
Second.
20th, 2022 City Council meeting and approve the minutes. Been moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Chair will entertain a motion to incorporate the pre-council first reading of ordinances in the record of this City Council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to incorporate the pre-council reading of the consent agenda in the record of this City Council meeting.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Chair will entertain a motion to place the consent agenda on final passage.
So moved.
Been moved and second. Any discussion?
Mayor, real quick,
Alderman Hanauer?
I know we jumped ahead, but Major Eddie was sitting up here. I don't know if he wanted to speak real quick before could we suspend this and allow him to
Sure.
at least give him, he was very,
Why don't you take a vote since you're in the
Yeah, if we can take a vote to move the consent agenda on final passage.
so moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Major Ed?
feel like I'm messing things up.
No.
It's important for me to say how much it means to me that the support that the city council has given over the past couple of years. From my perspective, as a community, we're in a whole different place now than we were a few years ago. And it's because of the work of the people behind me, and it's because of the support you've given. And so the agenda item is talking about funding the shelter that we've been running. I think we took a great step forward when we went to year-round instead of just over the winter. I think that made a huge difference, and we saw the results over the summer when we were averaging 35, 40 people a month. We've always assumed in the past that the summer is okay and people can go out, but we've shown that that's not true. And so we're really glad to be part of this system and to be part of the progress that's being made. And so, yeah, coming to you to ask for the ability to keep funding this until the job's done. That might be December, it might be June, whatever it takes. Again, this is a reimbursement system. It's not just a grant. So we're going to spend the money that we spend out. We're going to be reimbursed that. And so just asking for your support, and I thank you for what you've done already. I assume there's some questions.
Yeah, Alderwoman Conley?
Of course.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Captain Eddie, and I appreciate you staying. And just real quickly, how many days in the last year have you been able to be, or found that you needed to be open on a 24-hour basis?
I don't know exactly, but there's been, anytime it's been under 32 degrees, we've been open for sure, or if there's a storm of some kind. Otherwise, we focus on the afternoon hours when there's less places for people to go.
Right, and then, and so we talked a little bit about the services and kind of, this transition plan that's coming with the larger strategic plan. Have you found that, like, working with, like, the behavioral health services, and are they able to be in the building on a regular basis?
Absolutely, yeah. We couldn't do what we're doing without that. I think that's a key component to what we're doing is behavioral health. And, we made a lot of progress because of that, because of their help. This whole thing is really, it takes a community. It takes everybody involved. It's not something the Salvation Army can fix. It's not something that any one organization can fix. Working together, I think, is why we've seen the progress that we've seen so far.
Right, and coming at it from so many different angles, and that's wonderful. And I, again, really appreciate that the Salvation Army has stepped up to take this on, and just encourage you, thank you again for the reports. It really does help to get that kind of regular feedback on what's going on in the shelters. I know I've heard from people who are saying they kind of, I think they thought that having a full year emerge overflow shelter meant that we would have a full year 24-hour, all services provided. And so kind of just wanted to get at that, that's not actually able to happen all the time, but that you are open when the weather is truly.
Well, and from the very beginning, our purpose is to fill a void, to be a Band-Aid, to be the entry level to get somebody to another place. The services that you see in the reports, they're largely to be able to get them into another part of the system. So there's very few people that we get an ID and say, okay, have a good day.
Right.
We got an ID now, here's the caseworker that you need to talk to at this organization. And so really prepping them so that the next step they're successful for. And so I'm really proud of the staff that we have, and the caseworker that Josh referenced. She's fantastic. She's done a great job with all of that. And so, yeah, I hope that answered your question.
It does, yeah. Thank you very much, and thank you for staying in and coming back up.
Any other questions or discussion? Is there a motion to pass the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved second.
Thank you, Captain Eddie.
All in favor, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. Voting is now open.
I believe this includes the ordinance, right?
And the consent agenda passes 10 voting yes, none voting no. Agenda number 2022-384 and 2022-463 remain tabled or in committee. Next item on the agenda is 2022-558.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a
Alderman
motion for an
Fowler.
omnibus vote for agenda items number 2022-558 through 566. They're all appointments or reappointments.
So moved.
Been moved and second for an ominous vote on items of 2022-558 through 2022-566. And seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. First one of those items is 2022-558, an ordinance approving the reappointment of Zell Ramirez to the Community Relations Committee. Number 2022-559, an ordinance approving the reappointment to Piro Taco to the Community Relations Commission. Next item is 2022-561, an ordinance approving the reappointment of Greg Goldberg to the Historic Sites Commission. Next item is 2022-562, an ordinance approving the appointment of David Finnegan to the Springfield Historic Sites Commission. Next item is 2022-563, an ordinance approving the reappointment of Ernie Slowtag to the Springfield Historic Sites Commission. Next item is 2022-564, an ordinance approving the reappointment of Peggy Grant to the Springfield Historic Sites Commission. Next item is agenda number 2022-565, an ordinance approving the reappointment of Stephanie Doe to the Springfield Historic Sites Commission. And the last one of those items is 2022-566, ordinance approving the appointment of Sue Ellen Funk to the Springfield Historic Sites Commission. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Been moved and second. Discussion. If any of those members that I've read your name, if you'd come forward and introduce yourself, we'd appreciate it.
Evening. I'm Azael Ramirez. I'm with the Community Relations Commission. I'm a 22 years Springfield resident now here, originally from Panama. I was citizen in 2015. I've been with the commission now for about 3 years. Graduate from UIS, MBA, also Edwardsville, Lincoln Community College. So basically, I'm in the community here, trying to participate in whatever way I can, try to make a better community here for my kids, 3 kids here in Springfield. So I'm glad to be here, meeting you all, and hope to do my part to contribute.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. The voting is now open. Appointments passed, 10 voting yes, none voting no. Next item on the agenda is 2022-567, an ordinance to increase the number of Class E liquor licenses by 1 for Brandy's Place LLC, doing business as Brandy's Place, located at 723 North Grand Avenue. Chair will entertain a motion to place agenda number 2022-567 on final passage.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion vote yes. Those opposed vote no. The voting is now open. And the ordinance passes 9 voting yes, none voting no, and 1 voting present. Chair will entertain a motion to suspend with the rules and place on first reading agenda number 2023-001, ordinance authorizing the execution of a 10-year Jimson sale agreement and parcel lease between the City of Springfield and Sulphur Plus LLC for the sale of Jimson byproducts for the Office of Public Utilities.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Chair will entertain a motion to motion to suspend the rules and place on first reading agenda number 2023-002, a resolution fixing a time and place for a public hearing on the Adirondack Tax Increment Finance Redevelopment Plan and Project for the Office of Planning and Economic Development.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Is there any unfinished business come before the council?
Yes, Mayor.
Alderman Hanauer?
I guess I'll put this under unfinished. It's kind of ongoing. It's been ongoing forever, it seems like. But Legacy Point, can we get an updated timeline on that? Because they've blown through the timeline they initially gave us. I happened to be in Lake of the Ozarks over the weekend. They have like a Legacy Point down there. And today they just announced that because it's been so popular and it's been bigger than they could imagine, they're doubling the size of it. And they're going to have it done by next year. We keep hearing promises and promises and promises. I believe we have increased the tax, the hotel tax, correct? And now that tax is building up. I hope he doesn't think he's getting it right now because he hasn't done a dang thing to put a shovel in the ground. So to me, that's money that should go to LaShonda or, to the Oak Ridge or whatever. Because until we start seeing some progress, and this is getting ridiculous. He's hit every taxing body for property tax breaks. I don't know if there's any more he can hit.
Park District.
Okay, well, I thought that, but my point is,
No, I
we
agree
had
with you.
a time frame that we were supposed to go by, and it's getting to the point where we either got to move on this or we got to refigure some things because I've talked to people out in the community, as I'm sure some of you guys have, that are very leery about this project. And I keep saying it's going to go, and boy, I want to see something moving. If he would have broke ground in October, November, we might have been able to have people playing this year. But as it stands, now we're out. We'll be lucky to have anybody playing in the fall if he would break in, So I would like to ask someone to get us a updated timetable. I don't need a long presentation telling me how he's going to do it. I want a timetable and when he's going to start moving things along.
Yeah, he's supposed to come in January. I don't know if you've had any conversations with their or their council at all, or
There have been several requests for a report. Your point is well taken because the agreement requires regular reports. They're past the performance time under the agreement.
Yep.
The mayor's called. We've sent multiple requests for updates. I do know that they've been working with the other. I'm sorry.
Speak in the microphone.
I apologize. I was going to say, I know they've been meeting with the various taxing bodies. I'm pretty certain they did reach an agreement with the school district in the last 60 days or so. We were told that they were working with the park district, or it had some request or discussion. So there have been multiple requests for them to come to give a report to the city council. And they are technically and required to do that under the development agreement. They're outside the current performance parameters. That's been explained to them verbally, and they understand that they have the obligation to produce reports and show what the, if you will, progress has been. And they did indicate one phone call in December they would be willing to come sometime or provide some kind of a report in January. We're not sure which date. You know, which we've asked them to come either to the council meeting or committee meeting. There are 3 of those left in January.
Well, I just think, and excuse me, Mayor.
That's right,
but
go ahead.
I think that, you know, as far as I know, I haven't heard any type of bidding going on a project. It's been just stagnant. And yet we're collecting tax money. And
Not getting any of it. No one's getting any of it.
right, but are we holding it in escrow or?
Yeah, and we have
Nothing's
projects that
been
we
dispersed.
approved, like Emberclear,
Right.
that we've been waiting for how long? 6 years? So let's pipe down a little bit. I mean,
Oh,
sorry, but he did just give a presentation to MacArthur Boulevard. So he's not hiding, they're not hiding from anyone. So let's not, stoke this fear of the sky is falling and nothing's happening. There are a lot of things happening. So I agree. The developers need to come up here and give us a presentation. That's a completely reasonable ask, but let's not, sow doubt in something that he's actively working, yes, to hit every taxing body. That's what a lot of business people do, as we've seen in the last few weeks. So let's just let the process play out and see how it goes.
Alderwoman Conley?
Oh, I just want to make sure this is all done, because
Smart move.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, mine's a different kind of a question. Mayor, so last week we talked about for the ward meetings that we would have notes from prior meetings available so that we could check progress and give feedback on that. And I've been keeping an eye, I've been trying to keep, I had my notes from my Ward 8 meetings. When I went on the city's website last week, there's nothing from the 2021 meetings. There's no minutes, there's nothing documented on what happened at those meetings. So I think it's really a priority. We have the first of these meetings start this weekend.
Correct.
And it's important when you ask residents to come in and give their thoughts and express their concerns, and then it's not even recorded on our website so we can track it. And I'm going and looking at Ward 7 notes and Ward 6 notes, because some of those are coming into my ward. I want to make sure I'm well versed in the issues. Currently, people can't look back at what was said in prior years and be able to speak to that. So I'd really appreciate if prior to Saturday, the notes from the 2021 meetings were to be posted available on the city's website.
Yeah, they will be, and that's one of the reasons I asked Alderman Fulgenzi to go first, is get everybody more time to, absorb the information from the budget. And
So the budget that we're getting on
initiatives.
Friday.
Yep, and the new initiatives associated with that, so they will be out there, though.
Thank you. I'd appreciate it because it's important.
But all the other earlier years are out there from 2015.
Well, not all of them, actually.
15,
Like
16.
7 or Wards 9 and 10 are missing from, I think, 2019.
We
If we
didn't
could
have
just,
any initiatives.
no one spoke at your ward meeting.
I wouldn't say that.
I'd like to know what
Yeah,
you
we'll
did to
check
people
that.
in those wards.
All ours got done, right, Mayor?
We'll check that.
And if we could just have all the notes updated.
Sure.
And make sure that they're available so people can see what's happened in the past.
Sure.
Thank you.
Alderman McMenamin?
Just I think it's appropriate, Mayor, you called these town hall meetings, so it's appropriate that you be allowed to give the parameters of the meeting. I think it was a good idea to focus on the budget. We can't make this a grab bag for everything under the sun or a hit list for anyone who wants to take pot shots. I think the focus on the budget is good. Under, state and local law, we're required to have a hearing to discuss the budget among the public. I think it's the second to last meeting in February. And I think what you've just disclosed, Mr. Mayor, is that when we get our budget books, you're going to highlight, or Mr. McCarty will highlight the initiatives that are being taken for the next budget year. And so we're going to have in our hands where the city's going to focus into the next fiscal year. And I think that's the focus I'm going to give to the town hall meeting in Ward 7, because I think that's what you requested, and I think it's fair to honor your request. So that's where I'm coming from on this. I'm not going to allow the constituents to get off the beaten track at the Ward 7 meeting. I think we're going to try to keep them to focus on the budget, what we want to see happen, and what the initiatives are that are being undertaken at this point in time, subject to review by the council after we've all had a chance to think about it and after we've all had a chance to listen to constituents at the town hall meetings. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. Any other unfinished business? As a reminder, the first ward meeting is Saturday, January 7th at 9 o'clock at Fulgenzi's on Sangamon Avenue.
And we will have coffee and donuts.
Is there any new business come before the city council? Do have a couple announcements. One is a community blood drive on Friday, January 6th from 11 to 4 at Lincoln Library. And then tomorrow we have the meeting of the ECDC at 11:30 in the library. And then the inauguration, the state's inauguration for officials, the governor and so forth is Monday, January 9th. Can't remember, is it at 10 o'clock? Or
The swearing in is at 11.
11 o'clock.
Doors open at 9:30. Tickets are available. And then Wednesday is the House and Senate being sworn in. The Senate will be sworn in over here at the Old State Capitol.
And that's when our very own Doris Turner will be sworn in.
Yes, she will.
And then the other ones will be at the Banks of Springfield Center, I believe, for the officers. Any other new business? We do have someone signed up to speak. It's Hakeem Lakman. Is he still here?
Yeah, he's coming back now.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I hope everyone had a good holiday. I know I did. But I was just up here to building and zoning to get permits. I'm allowed to get a permit for a regular home and do my own work on, but I can't get one for a mobile home that I had replaced of the burnout one that was caused by CWLP. Why is it a double standard? Why can I can get a permit for one, but I can't get a permit for another, but I have to go and hire electricians, plumbers, HVACs to come in? That's going to cost me several $1,000s, which I don't have.
Was this the burnout structure you're trying to rehab, or?
No.
Nope.
We demolished the burnout, okay, got it off the property and cleaned it up. we went and got another mobile home.
Okay.
I went and pulled it onto the property. Okay? Now, they're saying I can get a permit to put it there, but I have to get a licensed electrician, licensed plumber, licensed HVAC, licensed mechanical to do the work. But if I had a home like everyone else here that didn't live in a mobile home, I can get the permit, no problem, and do the work myself. Why is the double standard?
Yeah, if you want to talk to Nate Bottom, he'd be able to explain. I'm not sure what the answer is on that, but he'd be able to help you with regards to that.
Well, is there some way that he can come up here and explain it to everybody? That way everybody knows the reason why?
It's an individual problem.
Yeah, sorry, I haven't had a chance to really
Thanks,
look into this, but, yeah, all utility, any utility hookups need to have the proper permits. You'll need to obtain all necessary building, electrical, and plumbing permits in order for you to be able to do that.
So if he had his own house, what he's saying is if he's a homeowner, he could do the work, I think
But
they
you
have
can't
to all
hook
be
it up
licensed.
from the utility.
I see.
You know, if you're doing just some minor rewiring, minor plumbing modifications, faucet repairs, you can do that. However, whenever you're actually doing the utility hookup to the structure, the proper person
You
has
mean to the
right.
city's infrastructure, like to the hot wires or to the
Correct.
or things of that nature?
So if you're doing repair work within the structure itself, you could do it. But I think what you requested was to hook up to the city's electrical. And to do that, you have to have a licensed electrician.
What I'm saying is, okay, you got a light pole out here. Okay, out here at the street. Got a main line coming in. Okay, it's disconnected from your meter box. If I want to replace that meter box, I have to get an electrician to come in to replace it. But if I owned a home like one of
You
yours,
still have to do that.
I could do it.
No.
You can't.
You still have to do
Get a
that.
permit.
No, you can't.
You got away with one if you did it.
Yeah. My line, sir.
I came up when I bought 929 North Fifth and 1001 North Fifth and did it.
You're not supposed to.
You're not supposed to. My line just snapped in the back of my house during the last storm, and I had to call. The city came out and turned it off. I had to get a licensed electrician to come in and redo the box. I could not touch it myself, being a homeowner.
Otherwise, it'll burn down.
Good.
Now, as far as from the weatherhead to the city's line, I can't touch.
Right.
But from that point, from the weatherhead down into the house, I can touch. If I had a home like you.
No.
Yeah, actually, I hire mine out because I'm not very good at electricity.
I'm not touching that.
Well,
But
I'm the
on that,
licensed
though, going back to
electrician.
Nate's point is when you're connecting up to your structure, you have to have a licensed electrician.
Yeah.
You do. That's a requirement, so.
See, down in Texas and
But I don't know if
California,
anybody from
contractor
CWLP's here?
has
Are
to
they,
be licensed
anybody here
in all
that
area
would
aspects of
like
the
to
building
explain that?
trade. Electrical, mechanical, HVAC,
Right.
mechanical, the whole 9 yards. But here in Springfield, you don't, as a contractor.
Well,
No, that's where all the fly-by-nighters come in at.
Yeah, but we'll share your concerns with the utility. Are they here or no?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Over here,
Yeah, they can talk
But,
offline.
All I want to do is able to get the permit, hook up my sewer line to the existing line that was already there, the electric line that's already there, get the permit for, be able to hook right up to it, you know.
yeah, if you're hooking up to the outside, which is city infrastructure, you have to have the license
No,
professional.
there's no, it's not the city's infrastructure. All it is for the plumbing is
Well, we
come
can
up-
have an inspector go out there and take a look at it.
Yeah, and
Yep.
we've had discussions, and you need to get all applicable permits as well
Well-
as have all applicable inspections done.
I
You
have
still
no-
need to submit the plans that we've directed you to submit. We need to have the proper documentation, showing that your setbacks, are correct, as well as the
I'll
proper
be up there
size of the
first thing in the
structure.
morning with it.
So if you can provide us the documentation, we can go ahead and get you the permit issued the
Then I
correct
can
way.
go ahead and.
With the proper contractors as well. Yes, sir.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to address the council?
Alice signed up.
Oh, okay,
And I did sign up.
okay. Yep.
You know, you're at the budget meeting right now. You're trying to figure out how you're going to pay $6, $7, $9, or $297,000 to the dog pound, okay? I think you need to put that in the policeman's fund and the fire department fund. And I'll tell you why. My girlfriend had a dog that was a special dog that took care of her when she had seizures. He passed away at 2 o'clock on New Year's Eve. Okay, I called the pawn, I called the, all these other ones that charge $300 and $400 to pick up a dog, okay? When you don't have the money and you can't get to a bank on that day, who do you call? So I got really mad and I called the chief, this chief, okay? He got it done. He not only got it done, he called Mr. Staub, and Mr. Staub got it done for us. So I think that that's where the money that you're going to give to the dog pound, to the police fund, okay? Because I think they did the work that they should have done. Although I see a lot of the cars around for the animals, 5 or 6 of them were in my neighborhood for a black dog, and my neighborhood police officer is doing the job for that. So we need to have some kind of way that if a dog dies and we can call the pawn and have them come and pick it up. I think instead of that, they should have 24/7 service if they're going to get $290,000 of our money. Okay? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else wish to address the council? Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. We're adjourned. Thank you.
What, you know what? I'm a broken